Leamons, welcome back to another video of mine. So, if you don't know already, I went to an animation school, and I thought I'd finally talk about it in a video, talking about my experience at animation school, what the classes were like, whether it's worth it, the difficult parts, and the fun parts, everything surrounding it. So that's what this video will be. Firstly, I decided to separate all my classes into their own sections. They all need to be talked about individually, as the classes were all different from each other. Then, at the very end, I'll talk about my own experience, and if I feel like it's worth it or not to go to animation school. Traditional animation. This was the classical animation class, where we had to animate on paper instead of digitally. The point of it was so we could learn how animating on paper worked, and also so we could understand the basic principles of animation better. Overall, it was a useful class, and I enjoyed it. I definitely learned a lot about animation fundamentals that I didn't know prior. Before this class, I only ever knew how to animate digitally on my iPad, so I had some issues when it came to animating on paper. A big issue I had was keeping my character size consistent, which I quickly resolved by drawing keyframes first, then doing the in-between frames afterwards. I guess I never did that on my iPad, but it's not as easy to animate frame by frame on paper as it is digitally, so it's a good idea to plan out how your keyframes will look before jumping into the animation. Something important that I learned in this class was how to use anticipations in my animation. I never knew how much they added to an animation. Giving a character an anticipation before it goes into whatever you're animating helps so much with the motion. It gives the viewer watching the animation time to see the character prepare for their action. Sort of like how a character will squat down before going into a jump. If you don't add the part where they squat down, the jump action won't be as interesting or as clear to the viewer. Overall, the class was great. The only part I didn't like was capturing each of my frames on paper with the capture system. If you have done paper traditionally before, you know just how long it takes to capture each individual paper, and the longer your animation is, the longer it is to capture, and if anything goes wrong in the process of capturing, you have to redo it from the very start again, which happened more times than it should have to me. Life drawing. Basically, every single class we would have to draw gestures, to sketches, to full drawings of naked people. Yeah, it is better to have a naked model when learning how to draw human anatomy, and I'm not saying that there's anything really that wrong with it, but I couldn't help but feel uncomfortable, especially when they talked to us normally as they were modeling. Like, I couldn't take it seriously at times. But aside from this, how was the actual class? Well, I wasn't a huge fan. I'm not sure if other people liked it, but this was my least favorite class. Before art school, I never draw people or anything realistically, so having to go from a cartoony style to exact proportions was difficult. I'm not saying it was bad though, because I learned a lot. You'd be surprised how much it helps to know human anatomy in a realistic sense, because once you do, you can put it into your drawing style and I promise you, it's gonna look way better. As you know the basic fundamentals of human anatomy, so when drawing it in a cartoony style, it just feels more right. It's hard to explain, but you just gotta trust me, because it helped me a lot with my anatomy, so in a way, I'm grateful for the life drawing class. I just didn't particularly like it when I was actively in the class. It was stressful and intimidating. My teacher was the type of person to come around and point out all the flaws and mistakes in your art in front of everyone. With that said, she did it to everybody in the class, but it was still a bit embarrassing at times. She would constantly tell me I was pressing way too hard on the charcoal, that I should try to press lighter. At one point, she basically theorized that I had a lot of rage that I withheld, which is why I pressed hard when drawing. And I'm pretty sure that's not true, but I was kind of okay with it, as it gave me a free pass for drawing with the charcoal too hard. I actually don't know why I draw so hard with pencils and charcoal. I've tried to stop and draw lighter, but it's so hard for me. I don't know why. I literally would break my charcoal in half at least 2 times a week, just from the sheer amount of force I would use when I was drawing. Also, not to mention, some kids just had a natural talent for drawing. Like, they could draw the anatomy so perfectly. They would be able to draw the faces so realistically. I could never. Like, I definitely got a lot better at my life drawing skills near the end of the class, but at the very start, I was so embarrassed. I never wanted anybody to see my drawings, because I knew my skills lacked the most in life drawing. I was pretty confident in my animation abilities and my overall drawing of cartoon characters, but not life drawing. It was a huge reality check, and I really needed to work hard in order to improve on my realistic drawings. But overall, it was an okay class. Again, I wasn't a huge fan of it at the time, but I look back and I'm glad it was a class, as it really helped me improve on my art. It's like one of those things you dislike, but you know you have to do in order to succeed. Professional development. This was a strange class. It wasn't really art-focused, but more so focused on our growth and development as people, which in theory sounds like a great idea, but I didn't like how this class was structured. And it wasn't just me, other people disliked the class too. The reason why was because it didn't end up being useful in any way. One of our assignments in the class got us to determine what color personality we were. There were blue, green, orange, and gold. We basically had to take a test, and it would tell us what color we were based off our answers. And since we're all creative people, majority of us just got blue, which means we are creative and emotionally driven. Yeah, no duh, we're animators. There was only one kid who got orange, nobody got gold, and a few people got green. Although, when majority of people get the same color, because we all like animation, it's not as cool, or groundbreaking. Then we basically had to write about our personalities and how it changed our perspective, and I just made up some random stuff, as you do with these kind of assignments. But at least this assignment wasn't that bad, because there was an assignment from this class that was terrible. They decided to give us an assignment where we had to talk about our stress, things that stress us out, and how bad our stress levels were, in presentation format. And we're animators. We hate giving presentations. But the actual problem was, this was a first semester class. We didn't know our classmates that well yet, and for many of us, talking about our stressors was personal. So having to get up in front of everyone and present what makes us stressed out and how we currently feel with our stress, well, quite frankly, it made us all stressed out. That was the common joke of this presentation, that having to discuss our stress to people we didn't fully know yet was stressful. One kid started to cry during their presentation. They had a hard time opening up to others, let alone people they didn't know well, and just couldn't help but start crying. It was not an easy thing to present in front of others, so that's a big reason why I disliked this class, the stress presentation, and also the fact the class wasn't even useful in any way, at least not in my opinion. Storyboarding. Fun fact, I don't like storyboarding, which I know is an unpopular take, because my whole class loved storyboarding, from what I knew. The class itself wasn't bad or anything, I just didn't ever take a liking to it. I've always drawn my sketches too detailed, too thick, too perfect. Basically, I draw my sketches exactly how the line art will look, which for storyboarding was a problem. We had to draw our sketches roughly and without too many details in order to draw fast enough when making our storyboards. The point wasn't making the storyboard look its best and most beautiful, it was to make it quick and clear enough for the animators to reference off of when animating over it. As the sketch won't be in the final project anyway, time is money, and that's why my teacher drilled it in our heads to draw the storyboard panels fast. And even with this knowledge, this understanding that we needed to draw our sketches quickly, I just couldn't. I literally would spend so many hours on my storyboard projects for that class because I couldn't make them rough and fast enough. I couldn't help myself. I wanted to make my sketches look nice. And it probably didn't help that we had to show off our storyboards to the whole class, so I had extra pressure to make it look good. Either way, this class was still fun, and I did enjoy it. I just had way more of a workload than I should have, which was sort of annoying at the time. But if you're interested in animation, consider storyboarding. Don't take my experience, because who knows, maybe you will excel at being a fast sketcher. A lot of people in my class liked it so much that they wanted to do storyboarding over animation in the industry. Character design. This is definitely my most favorite class. It's literally about designing characters, something every animator loves to do. It would be weird if someone didn't take a liking to this class. Anyway, this class was informative and fun. I feel like I learned so much I didn't already know about character design, such as shape language for characters' bodies, using certain colors for characters, posing characters depending on their personalities, and good, clear silhouettes for your posing. This class really helped with my anatomy and posing skills for my characters, something I always struggled with beforehand. I'd usually just throw my characters in random positions that didn't make any sense. An example was making my character look shy with its body language, even if they were bold and outgoing personality-wise. It just didn't fit the character. and I learned how to show off personality with body language. I also learned how to use silhouettes in my drawings, and if you don't know what I mean by that, I'll show you two drawings beside each other. You can tell which silhouette is more clear and interesting to look at, even without seeing the actual drawing for it. And in the end of the day, it's not the worst thing if you do make your drawings have unclear silhouettes, but in my opinion, it does help a drawing look better and more interesting. There was one slight annoyance to this class, and that was the criticism. When making our designs, we would put them up in front of the whole class, and the teacher would go over each of our drawings. And usually everyone got slammed with criticism, even if their art was really well done. Now, criticism isn't bad for art. If anything, it's good. You want to learn how to improve, and by getting criticism, you can learn how to fix your mistakes. The only issue was, sometimes our teacher's criticism wasn't exactly criticism, and more like personal bias. He had a thing for the color gray, for example, because apparently he told multiple people in my class and the other class to change their character's color if they had any gray in it. I understand gray is a bit of a boring color, but in certain instances, it can work in a character design. It became a joke that he disliked the color gray, so everyone knew to steer away from it in future projects. We had one project where we had to design characters based off a script from a pilot episode, and there were lots of references of these characters that past students designed. I wanted to be creative with my design concepts though, so I tried to do different things but also keep it looking like the character would for its personality. My teacher kept making me change elements in my design over and over, and eventually, it just looked like one of the previous students' designs, which was a bit annoying, as it felt like he would make us change the designs to what previous students did, instead of what could possibly be something new and interesting. Again, this is a very minor annoyance, and overall, I really did enjoy the class. Digital animation. This was definitely one of the most useful classes, if you wanted to learn how to use the animation rigs. If you don't, then, I guess it's still good for learning how to use the Toon Boom Harmony software, because, to my surprise, we didn't ever do hand-drawn animation in this class. We only ever used the animation rigs to animate our assignments with. Which is understandable. It's really good to learn how to animate with animation rigs, especially since a lot of animated shows use animated rigs, but I also wish we would have done some hand-drawn animation as well, since I feel like I don't know how to draw hand-drawn animation as well as I do with the rigs when it comes to doing it on Toon Boom Harmony. I felt confident to do hand-drawn animation on paper, but I would have liked to have some assignments in the digital animation class where we did it hand-drawn too. Maybe that was just me though, since in the end of the day, you just have to apply hand-drawn animation to the digital programs. I just would have liked a bit of experience doing that in our class. But anyway, besides that, this class was really intense. We had to figure everything out about Toon Boom Harmony in such a little time, because we couldn't waste too much time learning the program and had to just jump right into doing our animation assignments. I didn't mention this earlier, but the whole program was fast-paced, which was a lot. Animation is already something that takes time, so doing it as a fast-paced program is stressful. I will admit, I love using animated rigs, more so than doing animation by hand. I even made a rig of Leamon. That's how much I ended up enjoying the rig animation. It's just easier to pose them into keyframes like puppets, then fill in the in-betweens, and edit and adjust everything to your liking. It's a different way of animating, and I found it really cool. Although with that said, it took a while to learn and get used to using the rigs. They are way more complicated than you'd think. Like, look at what their node view looks like. You have to keep track of all of that when animating with them. I still wonder how I was able to figure it all out in the end. Final project / short film. So, this was the final class of our program. We had to make a short animated film, but with a few restrictions. Firstly, we had to make the short film longer than 2 minutes, but not anything over 3 minutes. Which sounds nice when you think about it from an animating perspective, although it was hard to come up with story ideas for something under 3 minutes. The hardest part about our final project was coming up with an idea, or at least it was for me. I literally spent hours just sitting and pondering on what I wanted to do for my short film. It didn't help that we had to come up with 2 different ideas, as our teacher wanted us to have a first idea and a second backup idea. Then we would present these short story ideas to the class, and our teacher would decide which of the 2 had a better story option. If I couldn't even think of one story, how was I supposed to think of 2? Of course, eventually I did come up with ideas. The first idea was about a bunny and a coyote with a cute little twist, and I don't want to rehash the whole thing, but I did end up posting it to my spare YouTube channel, so if you're curious, you can watch that after this video. I'll link it in the video's description. And my second idea was a lot more dark, which was rather interesting, as I don't think I've ever tried to write something scary or unsettling. I just thought it was cool to branch out of my comfort zone. But everyone in the class was like, no, this girl ain't into horror. This doesn't suit her style. So the teacher and everyone thought I should do the first option. After we all chose what we were doing for our short stories, we had to create our characters and do full turnarounds for them. Then we had to create our storyboards for the short film, and then once that was all approved, create our backgrounds. And the backgrounds took so long to make. I had so many different angles and shots I had to draw out. I'm just glad I didn't choose a background style that was shaded and complex, because that would have been even more time consuming. I think we only had 2 weeks to do all of the backgrounds, and that's on top of our other classes. After the backgrounds, we started building the rigs of our characters on the short films. So, I talked about using rigs to animate, but building the rigs is a whole different ordeal. It's a lot of different pieces you have to draw out, and with those pieces, you have to connect them to the right things and cut and deform them to make your character have no lines from the line art throughout their body. It's a really confusing process, and I can't even explain it without it being a bit too complicated. But if you take animation school, you'll definitely learn how to build and use the animation rigs in one of your classes. That, or you could try learning it from videos online. After we built the characters, we started doing the animation with our animated rigs. We had to animate each scene individually and save them as video files. We had to create our own goals for ourselves, and mine was to do 2 scenes every week for 3 months. So we basically had to animate 2 minutes of animation in the matter of 3 months, on top of some other classes. And my short film was more like 3 minutes. I was able to achieve my goal as I finished it by the end of the given 3 months. It took me the whole amount of time I was given. This was because after we made each scene, we would have 2 different teachers look over them and give us feedback and advice. So we usually have to go back and fix these scenes that we had already done, on top of working on whatever the new scenes were I needed done each week. Some people in the program didn't even finish their short films by the end, as it was just too little time for them, either because they wanted each scene to be perfect, or they set themselves up with too much work for what was achievable. Technically, it wasn't a big deal if you didn't finish the final project, as you'd still get a good grade for what you've done, but it was highly encouraged to finish the short film. All in all, this was a great class. When having to make a short film by yourself, there's so many different things you need to do, like creating the characters, doing the storyboards, creating the backgrounds, doing the animation, also making the animated rigs if you're choosing to do it with the rigs instead of hand-drawn animation. You experience so many different skills that you'd need to know if you worked in the animation industry, and you could get an idea of what position you'd like best, depending on what you enjoyed most when making a short film. As when working in the animation industry, you don't just do everything, you choose a specific position, like being a storyboard artist, a character designer, or being the animator. Final thoughts / is art and animation school worth it? That was all my classes, or at least the ones I felt were the most important to discuss in this video. It's true that I left some out, but it was because I didn't have much to say about them, and I didn't feel like they'd be as important to cover. We did have a prop and background design class, but I felt like it was similar to the character design class, except you design backgrounds and props instead, so I didn't go over it. But it was also an informative class. Overall, the whole program was great. I feel like I came out of it with so much more knowledge about drawing and animation than I knew beforehand. I don't know if I would have been able to learn the kinds of things I did on my own, so in that sense, it was great. It was nice having teachers there who truly cared about your growth as artists, and who would put in time to help you improve and give good feedback on each project. It also does help being in person to learn these things rather than being online, and if you're wanting to learn more about drawing and animation to improve your skills, then I do recommend going to school for it. But the thing is, I regret going to animation school. I know I just said how great it was, and how much it helped me with my art skills, but the main reasons I took the animation program was to learn, yes, but also to find work in the animation industry, which, if you don't know already, is doing terrible. And it's not just like, oh, it's been bad for a couple months and it'll get better soon. No, it's been bad for at least 2 years now. So many senior animators that have been in the industry for years lost their jobs. So how is a junior animator supposed to find work? It's already hard for juniors, but now it's next to impossible. And as somebody who went to school for animation, hoping to find work afterwards, that's depressing and unmotivating. Unmotivating. That's not a word. Demotivating. Anyway, you get the point. It was really hard to come out of my program with the realization that I wasn't going to find any kind of animation work. There was literally no job postings on Indeed. So I had to apply for expression of interest applications, which is basically just an open application if the animation studio ever needs anybody for a job position in the future. That's how bad the industry was doing. Something I didn't appreciate was that my teachers in my program kept saying that the industry will pick up soon, or pick up by the time we were done the program. They even said lots of opportunities would come out in the springtime, and well, I completed my program last December, and since then, the animation industry hasn't gotten any better. I don't know if they genuinely thought the industry would get better, or if they were just saying that to soften our wounds. As, if you don't know, animation school is hella expensive. I went for 1 year and 2 months, and it cost me $27,000. I'm very fortunate that my parents were able to afford my tuition, as I'm aware many other people that took animation programs have to still pay off their tuition fees, and I can't imagine what that's like. So if anyone watching is in that position, I'm really, really sorry to hear that. And it's even worse given the fact people can't even find work in the animation industry right now. In a way, it feels like I wasted my parents' money on something that I can't even find jobs for, and I do feel very guilty about it. But I wouldn't have known this would happen. When I was in high school, the animation industry was booming, and they said animators were in demand in the studios in my city. So I thought it'd be a good career choice, as I'd have job opportunities and also enjoy the work I do. But as I said before, the animation industry has been awful for at least 2 years now, and I don't know how long it will be until things start getting better. I've had enough of people telling me things will get better soon, and then they just don't. I'm gonna be honest, I do feel like I've lost a bit of hope. I don't have as much motivation as I once had for animation. And I've been going back to school for other subjects. I've basically been taking programs this whole summer for grades 11 and 12 math, biology, and chemistry, so that I can get into a pharmacy technician program by this January. I've actually already been accepted into the program, which was nice to hear as I was cutting it close with all my prerequisites. But yeah, it's nice that I'm moving on into a field that will have more job opportunities, but it's also sad in a sense. I love everything about animation. I love the fact you can tell stories with animated characters. It would have been amazing to work in the animation industry. But I also have to be realistic too. It's been 2 years and things have not gone any better. People keep saying it will pick up soon, then months go by and nothing happens. So I wanted to find something else to do in the meantime. My parents gave me a choice. Either get a minimum wage job while I wait for the industry to get better, or go back to school and pivot for another career. As I already mentioned, I chose to go back to school. I don't know what my future holds for me, but one thing I do know is that I will never lose my creativity. I've always been a very creative person, and I love drawing and writing in my free time. No matter what, I'll always keep drawing and being creative. And who knows, maybe job opportunities will come out in the future for animation, and I'll get to work on some projects. But now I've reached the end of this video, and it comes down to if I recommend animation school. I'd say if you truly just want to learn and grow as an artist and animator, then you should take an animation program. If you don't mind paying the tuition, then do it. Just remember that the animation industry is doing very poorly right now, and it's hard to say whether there'll be jobs or not when you do get out of the program. And that leads to my next part. If you care a lot about doing animation as a career and feel that the program's expensive, I don't know if I recommend taking a program for it. I mean, I can't tell anybody what to do, but as far as I'm aware, nobody from my class got jobs in the industry. And there were some kids that were insanely talented. So just know it's a risky career, especially right now. So you'd be paying a lot in tuition, potentially to not even find any jobs in the industry afterwards. And that's really sad, because I know how many people love animation. I know how many people dream of it being their career. But I'm also just being realistic. It would honestly be a better idea to purchase the animation programs that studios and indie animations use and learn from videos how to animate. If anyone is wondering, Toon Boom Harmony is one of the programs many animated series use to animate 2D animation. Doing this would probably be cheaper in the end, and at least you wouldn't have a bunch of student debt. But again, I will not tell anyone what they should or shouldn't do. If you want to go to animation school, go for it, as it will really help your animation and art skills. I guess I'm also just trying to give a realistic perspective as well. Anyways, thanks so much for watching this video. I'm sorry I've been so inactive on this channel lately. I've just been so busy with life and classes I've been taking. I have some plans for other videos, and I hope to get to them soon. But for now, thanks for watching. It's been Leamon Puppy. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys all next time.